Get out. This cabin is for real family only, Amanda shouted as she threw my duffel bag onto the snow-covered porch. I stood there in silence, watching my sister-in-law toss the last of my belongings outside. Her perfectly polished nails gripped each bag tightly as anger filled her face. My name is Julia. I'm 34 years old, and I was being kicked out of my own family's lakeside cabin by a woman who had only joined the family 3 years earlier. This was the same cabin where I spent every summer growing up. My grandfather taught me how to fish here. Last spring, I scattered my father's ashes into the quiet lake from the old wooden dock. I looked at Amanda and calmly asked, "Real family? I've been coming here since I was 6 years old. I knew my brother long before you ever met him." She crossed her arms and smirked. "Things changed," she replied. "Michael agrees with me. This old place needs a complete makeover. We don't need someone hanging around, crying over old memories." The way she said memories made it sound like something worthless. Earlier that day, I'd accidentally seen the renovation plans open on her laptop. She wanted to replace Grandpa's handmade wooden kitchen with expensive stone countertops. The old radio Grandma listened to every morning would be replaced by smart speakers. Dad's fishing gear, hanging proudly on the wall for years, would disappear to make room for a luxury home theater. Every change erased another piece of my family. "Where's Michael?" I asked, even though I already knew. "At work," Amanda answered with a shrug. "Someone has to earn the money to fix this old cabin. Now take your bags and leave. Construction starts next week." I bent down, picked up my duffel bag, and brushed away the snow. The freezing wind stung my face, but it hurt far less than knowing the place filled with my happiest memories was about to disappear forever. What Amanda didn't know was that I had already prepared for this day. 3 months earlier, after I noticed renovation magazines arriving at the cabin every week, I visited our longtime family lawyer, Mr. Peterson. He had handled my grandparents' legal affairs for decades. When I asked him about the cabin's ownership, he smiled and pulled out Grandpa's will. "You're making a big mistake, Amanda," I said quietly as I unlocked my phone. She laughed. "The only mistake was letting you think you still belonged here. This cabin belongs to Michael now, and as his wife, I decide who stays." "No," I interrupted. "You don't." Her smile disappeared. "What do you mean?" "My father never gave this cabin to Michael." She frowned. "He couldn't, because it was never his to give." Amanda stared at me in confusion. "Michael told me this place became his after your dad passed away." "Michael assumed that," I replied. "Neither of you bothered to learn the truth." I opened an email from Mr. Peterson and turned the screen toward her. "My grandfather left this cabin to me in his will. He specifically wrote that he wanted it protected from being sold or turned into something modern." The color slowly drained from Amanda's face. "That's impossible," she whispered. "It isn't. Michael would have known. He would have if he had attended Grandpa's while reading instead of taking a ski vacation with you." I opened the digital property deed and handed her the phone. "Read it yourself." She grabbed it quickly, scrolling through every page. With each document she read, her confidence faded. Disbelief became panic. Finally, she looked up. "This can't be happening." "It already has." I folded my arms. "Every renovation you've planned requires my written approval. Every contractor you've hired needs my permission before touching this property." Amanda looked ready to explode. "We already paid huge deposits. Designers are flying in from New York next week." I calmly picked up my bag, walked past her, and stepped back inside the cabin. The familiar smell of pine wood and the old fireplace instantly made me feel at home. I placed my bag beside Grandpa's favorite chair before turning to face her. "That sounds like your problem." For the first time since arriving, Amanda had nothing to say. "You'll regret this," she snapped as she backed toward the front door. "Michael is going to hear everything." "I hope he does," I answered, sitting comfortably in Grandpa's old chair. "And while you're talking to him, tell him one more thing." I smiled. "I'm updating the guest list for this cabin." My eyes met hers. "And the first people no longer welcome are you and Michael." As Amanda slammed the heavy cabin door behind her, silence settled over the room. I stood still for a moment and looked around. The faded family photos still hung on the walls. Grandma's handmade quilts rested neatly over the couches. Warm sunlight poured through the windows that had watched generations of birthdays, holidays, and quiet summer mornings. This wasn't just a cabin. It was home. I took out my phone and stared at my brother's name. It was time for a conversation we'd avoided for far too long. One about family, respect, and the promises our grandfather wanted us to keep. But first, I called a locksmith. Some doors needed new locks. Others needed to stay closed forever. The family drama exploded faster than I expected. Within a few hours, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Michael called 17 times. Every voicemail sounded angrier than the one before. Mom, who usually stayed out of family arguments, suddenly insisted that I should keep the peace. But I was done sacrificing my own peace just to make everyone else comfortable. This time, I wasn't giving in. That evening, Michael pulled into the driveway. I was sitting on the front porch, wrapped in a blanket, holding a mug of hot chocolate in Dad's old camping cup. He climbed the steps quickly, snow covering the shoulders of his expensive coat. "What the hell happened, Julia?" he demanded. "Amanda says you threatened her." I looked at him calmly. "Do you actually want to hear what happened? Or did you already decide I'm the villain before you got here?" He sighed and rubbed his forehead, a habit I'd seen since we were kids. For a second, I remembered the brother who always looked out for me. "Jules," he said quietly, "you know this cabin needs work. It's getting old." I took another sip before answering. "The foundation is solid. The roof was replaced 5 years ago. Everything important is in good condition." I looked around the porch, and every piece inside this cabin carries a memory. I paused. At least it did, until Amanda decided memories don't matter. Michael looked away. "Amanda didn't mean?" "Yes, she did." I didn't let him finish. She knew exactly what she was saying when she called herself real family and threw my belongings into the snow. His shoulders dropped. "Why didn't you ever tell me Grandpa left the cabin to you?" I gave him a sad smile. "I tried. You and Amanda left Dad's memorial early for a spa weekend before the lawyer even finished explaining Grandpa's will." The silence between us became painfully heavy. Michael stared across the frozen lake as the setting sun painted the water in shades of orange and pink. Finally, he spoke. "We already paid everyone. The contractors. The designers. The deposits." "I know," I replied. "Amanda reminded me several times." He looked frustrated. "We can't afford to lose all that money." I slowly stood. And I couldn't afford losing my place in this family. For the first time, my voice carried years of hurt. Holiday after holiday, I've watched Amanda erase every piece of our family history. She remodeled Mom's house without asking. She threw away Dad's record collection because she said it looked messy. And now she wants to destroy the last place where it still feels like he's with us. Michael opened his mouth. "That's not." "No," I interrupted. "What's not fair is watching you defend someone who tried to throw your own sister out of her own property. What's not fair is forgetting where we came from just because your wife wants everything to look perfect for social media." I reached into my jacket and pulled out an old photograph. It showed the three of us.
Dad.
Michael.
Me.
We were sitting on the dock with fishing poles in our hands, smiling like the happiest kids in the world. I handed him the picture. "Remember this?" He stared at it quietly. "Remember when this cabin wasn't about money? When catching one fish felt like winning the lottery? When this place meant family instead of property values?" His fingers gently traced the worn edges of the photograph. For a brief moment, I saw my real brother again. The one who secretly gave me extra marshmallows around the campfire. He spoke softly. "Amanda isn't wrong about everything. The plumbing really does need updating." "I know," I answered. "That's why I already hired local contractors." His head snapped up. "You did?" I nodded. "They're replacing the plumbing and fixing the electrical system. The important things. But nobody is touching Grandpa's handmade cabinets. Nobody is tearing down these walls. And nobody is replacing decades of family history with expensive furniture that has no soul." Michael looked genuinely surprised. So, you are renovating? Yes. But I'm preserving this place, not destroying it. I carefully placed the photograph back into my pocket. You used to understand the difference. Michael slowly sat down on the porch steps.
Thank you.
He suddenly looked exhausted. When did everything become so complicated? I looked toward the lake. It became complicated the day you stopped protecting what mattered. The day you let someone else decide what our family's memories were worth. The last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the trees. A loon called across the quiet lake. It was the same peaceful sound that had put us to sleep every summer when we were children. After a long silence, Michael sighed. I guess those deposits are gone. Probably. I shrugged. Think of it as an expensive lesson. Always read legal documents. And maybe listen when your family is trying to tell you something. He gave a tired laugh. So, am I still welcome here? I smiled. You've always been welcome. This will always be your family's cabin too. But only if you come here to make memories, not to erase them. He hesitated before asking one final question. And Amanda? I looked him straight in the eyes. That depends. If she can learn to respect this family and the history inside these walls, then maybe. But until then, this cabin is closed to people who see it as nothing more than another remodeling project. Michael nodded slowly. Then he looked toward the driveway and quietly said, She's not going to be happy about this. That sounds like your problem, I replied, though my voice was much softer this time. I looked at Michael and said, Maybe it's finally time to decide what's more important, making Amanda happy with another expensive renovation or protecting the place where Dad, Grandpa, and all of our best memories still live. He didn't answer. Instead, he slowly walked back to his car, his shoulders heavy with the weight of everything he'd said. As I watched him drive away, I knew the fight wasn't over. Amanda wasn't the type to admit defeat. Mom would probably keep calling, asking me to be the bigger person. But standing on the porch of my cabin, with the first stars appearing above the quiet lake, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Some things are simply worth fighting for. And this cabin was one of them. The next few weeks unfolded exactly as I expected. Amanda turned the family conflict into an online drama. She posted carefully chosen pictures of peeling paint, old furniture, and worn wooden walls, claiming the cabin was unsafe and that I was refusing to move forward. Many of her followers supported her at first. Mom called almost every day. One conversation was full of guilt. The next was filled with attempts to negotiate. She wanted everyone to forgive and forget. But I refused to give up what Grandpa had trusted me to protect. Then something happened that none of us expected. One afternoon, I received a handwritten letter from Mrs. Harrison, our elderly neighbor who had lived across the lake for more than 40 years. Inside was an old photograph. It showed Grandpa carefully placing stones into the fireplace while the cabin was still being built. Tucked beside it was a note. Asterisk, I watched your grandfather build every inch of this cabin with his own hands. He always said he was building it for generations yet to come. Don't let anyone erase his dream. Asterisk. Her words stayed with me. A few days later, the local historical society contacted me. They had learned about the cabin and wanted to document it. According to them, it was one of the few original lakeside homes from the 1950s that had remained almost completely unchanged. The society's president, Diana, spent an entire afternoon photographing Grandpa's handcrafted woodwork, the stone fireplace, and every unique detail inside the cabin. As she gently ran her hand across the carved staircase railing, she smiled. This isn't just an old house, she said. It's a piece of local history. Your grandfather wasn't just a builder. He was an artist. Her words changed everything. Suddenly, Amanda's renovation project wasn't just upsetting the family. It threatened a building with historical value. As the Preservation Society shared photos and stories online, public opinion shifted. People who had once supported Amanda began asking why she wanted to replace something so special. For the first time, she found herself defending choices she could no longer justify. One crisp morning, I drove to the cabin and found Michael sitting quietly at the end of the dock. A steaming mug rested in his hands as he watched the calm water. "I've been here since sunrise," he said without turning around. "I've just been remembering." I sat beside him, letting my feet hang over the edge like we used to as children. "What are you remembering?" He smiled sadly. "Dad teaching us how to fish. Grandpa's ridiculous ghost stories. Remember how the lake monster sounded different every single summer?" I laughed. "And Mom always pretended she was terrified just so we'd feel brave." Michael chuckled. "Yeah." After a long silence, he spoke again. "I talked to Amanda last night. For real this time." I stayed quiet and let him continue. "She's dropping the renovation plans." I looked at him in surprise. "Really?" He nodded. "It wasn't because of the Historical Society. And it wasn't because people online turned against her." He paused before saying softly, "It happened because I finally stood up for something that mattered. For our family." "What changed her mind?" I asked. He reached into his jacket and handed me a photograph. It showed Amanda laughing beside the fire pit during her first summer at the cabin. She was smiling while trying to roast marshmallows. Behind her stood everything she had once wanted to replace. The old wooden walls, Grandpa's stone fireplace, Dad's fishing gear hanging proudly above it. "I showed her this picture," Michael said. "I asked her if she'd still look this happy if all of it had been replaced with expensive furniture and polished stone. I told her she fell in love with this place long before she ever thought about changing it." I quietly studied the photo. Then I showed her more. Pictures of us as kids. Dad teaching us to swim. Grandpa building the porch. I told her every story behind every scratch, every stain, every dent. He smiled. Eventually, she understood. Maybe not completely, but she's trying. I felt my eyes fill with tears. "I've missed you, Mike." He wrapped one arm around my shoulders like he used to when we were children. "I've missed myself too." The following weekend, Amanda returned to the cabin. This time, she didn't come with contractors. She didn't bring blueprints. She didn't argue. Instead, she carried a small photo album. Inside were old family pictures mixed with newer ones she'd taken herself during holidays at the cabin. She carefully placed it on the coffee table. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I became so obsessed with making everything look perfect that I forgot perfection isn't what makes a place beautiful." She looked around the room. "This cabin matters because it's real. Because every corner tells someone's story." For the first time, I believed her. As the months passed, the cabin slowly became a home for the whole family again. Amanda developed a genuine appreciation for old homes and even started writing about preserving historic buildings instead of replacing them. Michael rediscovered his love of fishing. Soon he was teaching Amanda from the very same dock where Dad had once taught us. With help from the Historical Society, we restored what truly needed attention. The plumbing was replaced. The insulation was improved. Electrical wiring was updated. But Grandpa's craftsmanship remained exactly where it belonged. Nothing that carried our family's history was lost. One winter evening, we all gathered around the stone fireplace Mrs. Harrison had captured in that old photograph decades earlier. Amanda sat beneath one of Grandma's handmade blankets, reading Dad's favorite fishing magazine. Michael was helping Mom figure out the new coffee maker we'd installed in the old rustic kitchen. The cabin had changed, but it hadn't lost its heart. It had simply grown. As I looked around the room, I realized something important. Protecting the past doesn't mean refusing every change. It means knowing what should never be replaced. The cabin was no longer just a building. It was still doing exactly what Grandpa had hoped, bringing family together, creating new memories, while honoring everyone that came before. And in the end, I learned that the most valuable things in life don't need to be modernized. They simply need to be protected, respected, and loved.